It's on, Prime Minister.
He certainly does. The Prime Minister speaking almost an hour ago in Canberra, a defiant Kevin Rudd, insisting that he will fight for the leadership and expressing some confidence that he does have the numbers. Power brokers, though, say that is not the case, that the numbers have swung behind Julia Gillard. For her part, the Deputy Prime Minister was locked in talks with Kevin Rudd through much of this evening, along with other factional chiefs in the Prime Minister's office, and she did look very stressed as she emerged and rushed through the corridors as journalists peppered questions at her.
Why has it got to this level?
Are you feeling...
How did this travesty from the Labor Party happen?
Thank you. Can I confirm I will be a candidate in tomorrow's ballot, and apart from that statement, I haven't got any other statement at this time.
Do you believe you can win, Prime Minister?
Thank you.
Do you believe you can win this, Gillard?
Well, Julia Gillard, of course, has been playing down any suggestion of a leadership change for weeks and for months, despite Labor's plunge in its primary vote and Kevin Rudd's satisfaction rating also tumbling. Julia Gillard has insisted there's more chance of her playing full forward than becoming Prime Minister. Well, things have changed this evening. It does seem that she was pressed somewhat into this by factional leaders, in particular from the right faction in Victoria and South Australia, where this began. I want to have a quick look at some of the newspapers that are going to hit the stands tomorrow. We're getting some front pages coming through now late this evening. First, I want to show you this one, the Illawarra Mercury. I think this is probably the pick of the lot so far. Our First Lady, there it is, Julia Gillard, our First Lady. So a suggestion there that she's already got this in the bag, as most of us seem to think. The Sydney Morning Herald, let's have a look at this, a bit more circumspect. Rudd's leadership doomed. And Phil Curry writes that Kevin Rudd's leadership was hanging by a thread after his support base vanished following a push to oust him, led by right factional operators in Victoria and South Australia, as we've been reporting. And Peter Harcher in the comment piece, federal government now belongs to Julia Gillard, as he told us earlier here on Sky News, Peter. He says the internal Labor support base for Kevin Rudd's prime ministership has fractured spectacularly. It's been exposed as lacking support, and Gillard has been revealed as the dominant force. Meanwhile, the Age in Melbourne, MPs move against Rudd. Michelle Grattan, Catherine Murphy and Tony Wright say Kevin Rudd was under intense pressure last night with a significant push by some Labor MPs against his leadership. The government was in crisis as senior figures were locked in talks in the Prime Minister's office. No doubt about that, things have moved a bit since they were written, and we now know that there is going to be a party room ballot, Peter Van Onselen, in under 10 hours from now.
And you would think that it is one that Kevin Rudd will lose. We've been saying that we think it's likely he would lose it overwhelmingly. I'm getting some text messages come in now as I guess his side of things try to push back, making the point that this could be closer than people think. One of the arguments that's come in is that Wayne Swan is not entirely sold on the shift. Now, that's interesting because the AWU are apparently on board and he's very much in their camp, so whether there's some accuracy in that or not, time will tell. Something else that is being said by people that are not what I would call as in love with Kevin Rudd, but they are concerned that he may be someone who might blow up in the aftermath of being rolled. Now, that doesn't sound to me, however, like a reason to stick with him, because that that is too negative a reason. So I think he is in too much trouble to be saved, but there is at least some pushback coming from the occasional Rudd supporter.
I don't think Kevin Rudd's the type that would blow up. Yes, he might remain and continue to express his views that he should have stayed.
Yeah, I should probably clarify. I don't mean Mark, not to the extent of Mark Latham, but certainly to the extent of Malcolm Turnbull in the aftermath of losing his leadership before he came back on board. Turnbull had the time to do that because the election was far away. Rudd doesn't have that time. So if he goes through what anyone would inevitably go through after a disappointment, that's almost too much for the Labor Party to handle.
It's going to hurt them all. Graham Morris, a former Chief of Staff to John Howard, I want to ask you how things work now tonight. MPs will have perhaps the Prime Minister and his lieutenants calling them. They'll have Julia Gillard and her allies calling them. What does an MP who, really has to make a tough call here do? And does it matter that if the Prime Minister's picking up the phone and calling them and saying, mate, are you going to back me? It's a tough call for a lot of these backbenchers, isn't it?
It is, but it's very important that they get a call from the Prime Minister. There will be a list there of really good supporters, PM, bloody hopeless, don't worry about them, and this crowd in the middle. And if that crowd in the middle just gets a call from a second-rater or a staffer, they're going to lose them. The Prime Minister has to ring them. And The one that I always found gutsy in this sort of situation is the politician, him or herself, who walks through the door and says, PM, you know I've always been a good supporter, but I've got to tell you face to face, this time, I can't. Now, that takes a lot of guts for a politician to do, but you always remember those people who had the guts to walk through the door, tell you face to face, rather than, you know, I might or I might not over the telephone. Lot of guts. Incidentally, you talk about emails and stuff. I'm getting a lot of stuff here that actually says that Kevin Rudd's pretty good. Where's he been? And what's the difference? We change sex, change hair colour, but not changing the policy. And the other was stupid bloody politicians playing stupid bloody games.
And I've had some, well, those on the Liberal side of politics also making some quips about the colour of Julia Gillard's hair being orange, Kevin Rudd's being likened to a lemon, of course, in the current Liberal Party advertisements. Oranges and lemons, the bells of St Clements. Kieran.
David, if you look at, just following on from your comments and Pete's before about those where the numbers might come from for Kevin Rudd, well, let's look at some of Julia Gillard's known political animosities, enemies. Lindsay Tanner and Julia Gillard have had a long time tense relationship. Anthony Albanese as well, although they come from the left faction, again has tried to apparently block this tonight with the hard left holding out the strongest behind Kevin Rudd. So if we want to look for where some numbers might come from, it's a pretty good place to start, I think, with Albanese and Tanner. Now, just an interesting point that one Liberal said to me, on background, this is unable to attribute this, but that Gillard will be a more formidable opponent, that she doesn't own the same liabilities, and that this person expects an early election, that she will campaign for a week around the country and then call an early election for August to try and capitalise on a honeymoon. So that's a prospect.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd be advising her to do that, though. It is a hell of a risk. I actually think if she runs around the country, that's fine, but bring back the Parliament for a couple of weeks on her terms. You know, the focus will be on her in the Parliament. It's very difficult for the opposition to get a lot of profile in just a couple of weeks. She cannot go past Christmas. The business community, the shopping people, everyone, and it just wrecks Christmas for everyone. The home sales, everything stops when there's the smell of an election in the air. So, you know, I still think it makes a hell of a lot of sense to do the orthodox somewhere around September, October, November. August to me is too early, too much of a risk. And I don't think that she can actually stamp her mark on a new government in that time.
Well, this is the tough call, isn't it, for Julia Gillard if she does emerge victorious tomorrow. You've got to work out the policies, first of all. You've got to sort this thing out with the mining industry. You've got to try and win back some support on climate change that's been lost to Labor given the shelving of the ETS. And then you've got to decide when to call an election. My phone's ringing. Kieran, what are you thinking about that?
Okay, I'll take over, no worries. I've got to tell you that I do think one of the likely outcomes tomorrow is Wayne Swan as to keep the Treasury portfolio and to become Deputy Prime Minister. That's
orthodox.
That's the sense that's the message that I'm getting from the left and right, that Swan will be kept there. As a bit of consistency as well, Graham, through, you know,
yeah,
what
it was also unusual that Julia Gillard wasn't the Treasurer in the first place. You know, normally, not all the time, but normally the Deputy is the Treasurer. It just so happened that she wasn't much good at it and didn't want it, and Wayne Swan was in the wings.
If we look at the mechanics of this all happens very quickly tomorrow. If there's a vote and Gillard, as expected, wins, she'll be sworn in tomorrow, new ministry probably tomorrow, new policies announced over the next week. But in terms of the mechanics tomorrow, the new ministry and Prime Minister, likely to all happen very, very quickly within 24, 48 hours. At least the Prime Minister to be sworn in straight away.
Yeah, and it's a fair point. Where is the Governor-General? Is she in Canberra? I'm not sure, actually. I think she's in Canberra.
If one of the staff members are watching, please just send us a message, yeah.
We'll read the
bring it to our
Vice-Regal
viewers.
column, as I'm sure we all do every day. Peter, what have you been hearing?
I'm hearing that there's a good 60 out of the 115 votes locked in for Julia Gillard because of the nature of the right coming in behind and the quotient of the left that she brings.
That's a victory.
So that's a victory. The issue then becomes how big is it? How much gets peeled off of the fragmented support amongst Kevin 07 people that came into the parliament at the last election, and very importantly the Albanese section of the left, which is a big block that currently is sticking by Kevin Rudd. So that combination gives him a large share, but you would expect that that will trickle away when the realisation sets in amongst sections of that there is a change on, so you need to give the new leader enough authority for that change to be relatively strong. That's what I'm hearing. I'm also hearing, which we talked about earlier in the night, that a very big factor behind the Victorian push against Kevin Rudd today and tonight comes back to that briefing, as they see it, of the Sydney Morning Herald by Alistair Jordan, if it's him or at least about him, briefing and talking to backbenchers. That, for some reason, has infuriated the Victorian right, and that has got them into action. The other thing that they've suggested is that the Victorian right did not like, and the broader party, he lost votes when he said that he is the leader of Australia. The Labor Party is a pretty tribal organisation. They consider him the leader of the Labor Party first and the Prime Minister and leader of Australia second. The fact that he went for the second as his primary objective, I'm hearing, lost him a couple of votes along the way.
Well,
David, we've got our intrepid reporter Graham Morris here, political correspondent. Graham, you've just got a story for us.
The Governor General is in Canberra.
Thanks, Graham. That's,
So
that makes
we can
life...
fix that one.
All right, that's good to know. That's good to know. And look, whether the Prime Minister and who the Prime Minister will be goes to the G20 on Friday, leaves the country on Friday for the G20 in Toronto. We don't know that either, whether it will be Kevin Rudd, whether it will be Julia Gillard, or whether no one will go. But, Peter, does it strike you as a little odd that the key block that's still with Kevin Rudd is the hard left, when here you've got the bloke who's a self-confessed economic conservative, who's shelved the ETS, who's hardened up on asylum seekers, and he's got the hard left as his only support base
Very good
tonight.
point, and it goes a long way. It goes a long way towards explaining why his speech was so passionate about refugees and the ETS. And frankly, it tells me that it's
You're
not
only
his.
pitching for that.
Well, yeah, it's not his passion; it's his pitch. It's his pitch for that hard right, that hard left rather, from the Albanese crew to stick with him because he's pitching to them on policy. Now, it's not enough of a block of support for him to get over the line, but it is enough to save him embarrassment if they stick with him till the bitter end.
Yeah, well, OK, let's bring in Ashley Gillan. She's in the corridors there of Parliament House as well. We're just talking about who Kevin Rudd's got and who he doesn't, and making a point. It strikes me anyway, it's a bit bizarre that Kevin Rudd, from the right in Queensland, Kevin from Queensland, is holding onto the hard left. Anthony Albanese and the like is his support base tonight. Peter Van Onselen telling us that 60 of the 115 votes are locked in already for Julia Gillard, given the right has gone that way. What are you picking up, Ash?
Well, David, behind the scenes, of course, in the Sky News office, we have frantically been making phone calls to every press secretary and minister and MP and senator that we know. And I can tell you that most often it's going straight to message bank. And if they do pick up, it's a very fast no comment. The only one we've managed to scrape a comment out of who was willing to go public with that was Craig Emerson. He says that he's very conservative. He usually supports the leader, and that was all. And then he had
Usually
to disappear.
supports the leader. What does that mean?
Yeah, that's right. So, look, I called Bill Shorten. Of course, I've spoken a lot about Bill Shorten tonight as one of those in the Victorian right pushing for Kevin Rudd to go, backing Julia Gillard. He has leadership ambitions himself, of course, and is no great friend of Kevin Rudd. He actually answered his phone as well. He said to me, Ashley, I'm a little bit busy right now. You can understand that he probably is very busy in his office right now, and my phone call was probably not the one he wanted to be receiving at that point. Now, Anthony Albanese is meant to be on AM Agenda with us tomorrow morning at 8:30. I haven't heard whether or not he's going to be fronting up for the show
Well, we've now
tomorrow.
got that on the record. People at home can jot that down. Anthony Albanese, 8:30 tomorrow morning here on Sky News. That will.
You might need a cardboard cutout, I think. I'm not sure that you're going to have the real deal in the studio.
I received a text message from Chris Pines on with Anthony Albanese every Thursday morning. I received a text saying, "Is Albanese still doing it? Question mark, question mark, ha ha." So that gives you a bit of a sense. I'm not sure that the minister will be turning up to chat with us tomorrow morning, of course. Instead, they'll all be frantically counting numbers and getting ready to walk into that room to vote in a leadership ballot.
Yeah, that's right. The leadership ballot at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Kevin Rudd v Julia Gillard.
You just have to look at the two scenarios, don't you? I mean, if Kevin Rudd gets over the line, this isn't over because the push is on. Who stays on the front bench? Who retreats? Gillard, you would think, can't stay. This isn't over. That's a worst-case scenario for the Labor Party, I would have thought. Whereas if Gillard wins, however bloody it might be, whatever reaction Rudd and his supporters like Anthony Albanese might have, who knows? But the point is, you know there's not going to be a counter-challenge. There's not going to be ongoing obvious destabilisation. The party will move on. That tells me that you would have to think that the momentum over tonight before the ballot tomorrow will keep moving in the favour of the challenger rather than the incumbent.
Look, I just want to pose a question, if I can, to Kieran and to Graham. Julia Gillard's role tonight and her performance tonight and what she's done tonight. It looks like, because none of us have been able to talk to her, she's been very closed shop about what's been going on in her head for the last week and most particularly tonight. But she's looked as though she's been pushed into this by others. She looked incredibly stressed there tonight. She's not come out in front of the cameras to say, "This is why I want to be Prime Minister." She's letting her and her numbers people do the calls and try and convince people that they need to make this shift, and she's probably going to get there. But she has not come out in front of the cameras and said publicly to the Australian people and to the caucus, "This is why he has to go and I should be Prime Minister." Graham, was that a mistake?
No, because it's all about credibility. And she has been saying for some months now that Kevin Rudd is the leader. It's all for furfies. She's not going to challenge. And everyone tried step one tonight, or this afternoon and tonight, and that was see if you could tap the Prime Minister on the shoulder, spook him, get him to walk. The leadership would be vacant. Julia Gillard goes in unchallenged. And I suspect for a little while this afternoon that was probably a possibility. But the Prime Minister, being the Prime Minister, didn't react as everyone thought he might. He's called the bluff, certainly tonight he has, and has said, "Righto, if you want to knock me off, be it on your head, I'm a winner. Have a go, see how you go." But I do suspect that at some stage in the morning, some very wise heads are going to say to him, "Prime Minister, you're going to burn the house down here if you force us to have a vote. You might be humiliated in your own interest, the party's interest. Go with grace, go with style, and we'll cheer you out the door." The alternative is, I think, that they throw him out the door.
Well, we're nearly going to wrap up our rolling coverage here. Kieran, some final thoughts from you, particularly Julia Gillard. Did she do the right thing tonight? It didn't strike me as a very good look. Yes, she'll probably win tomorrow morning, but could she have handled it better tonight?
I don't think so. I disagree on that. Dave, I think that there was nothing in it for her tonight to front a bunch of rabid journalists. I don't want to talk about my colleagues like that, but, you know, we were pretty much like that tonight. I just want to leave you with two bits of correspondence. One from Barry from Springvale North. He says, "I wonder if Deputy Prime Minister Julia Gillard will play full forward for Footscray." That's one of our viewers. As we've mentioned, you know, she said she's more likely to be full forward for the Bulldogs. And one other one, "See if you guys can keep going until the Socceroos kick off. Well done." No, thanks. Thanks anyway.
Peter Van Onselen, what's going to happen tomorrow?
Well, I think Julia Gillard is going to win, but I'm interested in this idea that Graham raised about whether or not Rudd would go with grace by stepping down. The problem with that is if he decides to step aside and they're going to cheer him out and do the positive thing, how do they then justify having just asked him to leave? It almost is inevitable to me that there has to be some pain attached to this, because they have moved on an incumbent Prime Minister who is in his first term in office just ahead of an election. You can't cheer him out the door, I wouldn't have thought, because it looks disingenuous. You have to kick him out the door and explain why doing so was necessary.
Ashley Gillen, some final thoughts from you there. You've been racing around Parliament all night.
Look, David, I was ready to get on a plane to go to Toronto on Friday to follow the Prime Minister over to the G20 summit, and now I'm wondering that trip's probably cancelled. And
Sorry
maybe
about
it
that,
actually
Ash.
wouldn't be a bad thing for Julia Gillard to go, I don't know, looking quite statesman-like, stateswoman-like,
angling for
shaking
the
hands with
overseas
Barack
trip.
Obama, David Cameron. David, I still want to go to Toronto, so let's sort something out.
I think
after
you're
the
right, though.
broadcast.
Rub shoulders with Barack Obama. I don't know if it can all be pulled off that quickly, but an interesting thought. An interesting thought. Ashley Gillen, thank
Stranger
you.
things have happened.
They have, as we've learnt tonight. Thank you for your thoughts. Look, a final thought from me. This is just an extraordinary night in Australian politics. We've gone from one of the most popular Prime Ministers in Australian history just 8 months ago to now facing the very real prospect that Kevin Rudd will be turfed out by his own party tomorrow morning, not given one full term in the Lodge. Julia Gillard looking harangued tonight, but tomorrow is expected to be looking victorious as she becomes Australia's first female Prime Minister. But will Labor be able to get over these deep divisions, gather itself, try and present some sort of united front, which they have not been able to tonight, and convince voters they deserve a second term in office? Or will they become just a one-term wonder and relegated to the dustbin of political history? It will all be unfolding tomorrow. You can watch it all happen right here on Sky News. We'll have updates for you, of course, throughout what's left of tonight and then right throughout tomorrow. This is the place to watch it all happen. What will happen to the Labor Party? What will happen to the Prime Ministership? Watch politics unfold live here on Sky News. Thank you for joining us this evening. It has been an interesting one, to say the least. I'm David Spears, and Peter Van Onselen, thank you for joining us. Kieran Gilbert, Graham Morris, it's been a fascinating few hours. We'll be back with all the latest tomorrow morning. For now, I'm David Spears. Thanks for your company.